Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antique Society tasting. Uh, I'm going to talk to you about my favourite whisky of the year 2025 tonight. And I'm going to do a parallel tasting of two whiskies, which are related in a sense. The second of which is my favourite whisky of the year 2025. And it will be the kind of duet that's rather loosely defined, uh, purely for fun and a bit of glory. Uh, I'm going to be comparing a Dalmunich with a imperial whiskey. Uh, Dalmunich replaced the imperial distillery in Cairn after its demolition by Pernod Ricard. And this is going to lead into some tastings I'm going to do in the early part of 2026, which are going to be looking at closed, lost, ghost distilleries and seeing what it is we're missing from these blasts from the past. Uh, so don't worry, I'm not going to be looking for any, with this taste, I'm not going to be looking for any so-called terroir effect linked to the distillery's locations, especially since our Imperial tonight, which is my favourite whisky of the year 2025, for reasons of it's just a great whisky and also heritage and history. And it's, I think, quite a find. Uh, the Imperial is naturally quite a few years old. The distillery closed in 1998 and was demolished completely in 2013, whereas the new Dalmunich only began to make a name for itself in 2014. It is worth noting that the owners reused a good number of materials from Imperial during the construction of Dalmunich. Dalmunich is one of the newest and most modern distilleries in Scotland. It was commissioned by Pernod Ricard, owner of Chivas Brothers, to produce spirit for their blended Scotch brands. It stands on the banks of the River Spey, and Imperial Distillery was demolished to make way for the new build. Uh, the location being home to a distillery since 1897. Imperial Distillery spent much of its life supplying spirit for blends like Teachers, Ballantynes, and Old Smuggler. But the industry downturn of the 1980s brought production to a halt. And when Pernod Ricard acquired Chivas Brothers in 2000, they decided to offload the premises, and the plans were to build flats on the site, but no offer was forthcoming. Imperial then lay dormant until 2013, when a boom in whisky made Pernod consider an increase in their capacity. But by then, Imperial needed drastic refurbishment, and it was deemed more cost effective to demolish and build again. Plans to retain the original name were abandoned in favour of establishing a new identity. The new distillery was named Dalmunach after a nearby pool in the River Spey which flowed alongside. Work began in 2013 and the first spirit run took place the following year. The completed Dalmunach distillery was opened by the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, in 2015. It's been built to supply spirit for Chivas' blends. Official single malt bottlings have been extremely limited. However, some independently bottled expressions have started to appear, uh, and notably Duncan Taylor bottled a 2016 vintage as part of their Octave series, is what we're going to taste tonight. So, Dalmunich's contemporary design is said to resemble a sheaf of barley when viewed from above. The plans feature several modern innovations, including temperature controlled washbacks and an advanced heat recovery system. And it did win the Royal Institute of British Architect Award for Scotland in 2015. They were Design and construction were overseen by Pernod Ricard's production director Douglas Cruikshank, having started his career aged 15 at Imperial. Cruikshank ensured the new design paid homage to the original distillery. The stills were of a similar shape, and Oregon pine from the washbacks was used to clad interior walls. Red brick from the original mill was used to make a feature wall at the entranceway. So Dalmunich has 16 washbacks and 8 pot stills arranged in a circular fashion around the still room. At the centre is an impressive octagonal spirit safe, complete with a water-filled feature. Dalmunich can produce 10 million litres of alcohol per year. It is the 15th distillery in Pernod Ricard's Chivas Brothers portfolio and boosted the company's overall whisky production capacity by 10%. Most of Dalmunich's whisky matures in first fill and refill American oak hogsheads. A small number of other cask varieties, including ex-sherry butts, also feature. Dalmunich contributes to the likes of Chivas Regal, Ballantine's and Royal Salute. The first single malt was released in 2019 as part of Chivas's Distillery Reserve collection. That 4-year-old malt was bottled at 64.5% and retailed for £45. Only 348 bottles were made available exclusively from Chivas distilleries. Dalmunich has a classic Speyside flavour profile with lots of fruity esters. Its creamy vanilla notes, toffee and ginger spice are a common tasting note in the mature whisky. The new make has light meatiness on the nose. It's leathery with some cereal and a partially hidden sweetness. The palate is big and meaty, gravy brownie. It is sweet and thick, almost toffee-like. It's heavy. The finish is long with a hint of sweetness. So the Dalmunich I'm going to taste in comparison to my Imperial, my favourite whisky discovery of 2025, is a Whiskies of Scotland, the Octave Dalmunich, 4-year-old, 2016, 52.5%, bottled by Duncan Taylor. It's an India release from the lesser spotted Dalmunich distillery, which only opened in 2014, and it was distilled in 2016, spent 4 years in a single cask, after which it spent another 3 months in a smaller octave, and was bottled in 2020 by Duncan Taylor for the Octave series with an outturn of 84 bottles at 52.5%. Natural colour, non-chill filter. Let's see what we have here. I'll not spend too long on this one because I really want to move on to the Imperial, but it has nice tide line, nice tears. And I get sandalwood, green orchard fruit, and marmalade, toasted nuts, and a creamy malt. Butterscotch, sort of beery eau de vie from Alsace. Some notes of rubber from almonds, stones. It's quite raw, really. I'll try them out. get a cigar box and a suggestion of smoke alongside burnt caramel, oily malt, and peppery oak. It is quite raw and aggressive, very spirity and rubbery with some bitter caramel. A lot of coffee and some caraway. Some would say this is challenging, and I think they'd be right. The finish is orange peel and apple skin. It's long but not particularly pleasant. I'm going to add a mill of water to this. It's got some nice symmetry going on. And now I'm getting distilled beer, rubber, walnut stain, and new plywood. I'll try them out. It's a tad better with water, but it's just too rubbery, too young, too immature, and a little aggressive. And the finish, still long, but not particularly pleasant. I think for me, this whiskey is unnecessary, in my opinion. I'm not sure why Pernod Ricard would have let these batches leave their stable. I think I'm going to wait for some further, say, 10 years before I try my next Dalmonic. So, on to my favourite whiskey, which comes from the same location, but not really the same distillery. I'm going to cleanse my palate with Forest Feast salted dark chocolate almond. So, now to my favourite whiskey of the year 2025. And it comes from the Imperial Distillery. And Imperial Distillery is right next to Aberlour in the Scottish Speyside. And it's been closed since the year 2000. Actually, it hasn't produced anything since the year 1998. It was founded in 1897, so lasted just over 100 years. That was the year of Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, and it was named in honour of the royal house. The original kiln even had an enormous royal crest emblazoned on it. Thomas Mackenzie, the distillery's founder, was also a major stakeholder in Talisker and Dalhousie. The buildings were designed by the prominent distillery architect Charles Doig, and it launched production the same year. Although in 1899, less than 18 months later, it was forced to close due to the Pattison whisky crash. And it remained closed for the next 2 decades, not reopening until 1919. The site had been acquired by DCL but was managed as part of a dual ownership with Dewars and Johnny Walker in 1916. And when production relaunched, it was under their management. In 1925, the distillery was entirely bought out by DCL, but they decided to cease production again, and it lay quiet until 1955, when it was reopened, this time by SMD. This burst of operation was to be the distillery's penultimate. When it closed its doors again in 1985, it would only open them one more time from 1991 until 1998. And then, in 1998, the distillery was mothballed, and most of the buildings were demolished in 2013. Chivas Brothers built Dalmunich on the place that once held Imperial. Imperial Distillery had a production capacity of 1.6 million litres, and the water used in production was drawn from the Edach Spring, which is located near to the distillery. An interesting aspect of the production at the distillery was that 6 large washbacks were used to feed the production. Each had a capacity of 56,500 litres, an intimidating amount. Almost all the single malt produced at Imperial was used in blending. It was a major component in both Teachers and Ballantine's. Imperial's strong blending tradition continued right up until the distillery closed and was finally torn down. The distillery was powered by 4 stills, 2 wash and 2 spirit. The wash stills had a capacity of 18,500 litres, while the spirit stills had a capacity of 20,500 litres. Both of the stills were pear-shaped, with wide spherical lids and gradually narrowing necks. During its operational lifetime, Imperial provided its own malt. Floor maltings were used at first until 1965, when a Saladin's box was installed at the distillery to malt the barley. A Saladin's box is a large rectangular container, normally 50 metres or so long, which has a set of vertical screws attached to a crossbar, which slowly moves forwards and backwards through the bed of barley during the day. And this allows for air to flow through the barley, drying it. The barley used in the production of Imperial was unpeated, which contributed to the rich, smooth taste. Unusually for the time, the buildings, including the dunnage warehouse, were constructed of Aberdeen red brick instead of red brick and utilised an iron framework which protected it against fire damage. There was a small complex of dunnage warehouses on site, in which the small selection of the spirit to be used as single malt was aged. Used a combination of American oak and sherry casks to age the spirit. The sherry casks were used to age the spirit intended to be sold as single malt. The Speyside Distillery in Imperial was one of the many casualties of the harsh British economy of the 1980s and 1990s. Official bottlings have not been released in many years, partly due to the sporadic production times in the distillery's history. The most recent distillation occurred in 1998, after which the distillery was mothballed. Although it has continued to change hands, the only official bottling by the distillery had been a 15-year-old in the past decades. There's been several independent bottlings by companies like Gordon MacPhail, Signatory Vintage and Douglas Lang. And this is my favourite whisky of 2025 because it's a great whisky, smashing dram, also because it's a rare find and I just love the story, and I think it's packaged very well. It's a Imperial 1997, a Gordon and MacPhail exclusive, bottled at 50%, distilled in 1997 and bottled in 2007 after maturation in sherry butt, cask number 4960, strength 50%. Bottle doesn't tell you that it's non-chill filtered and natural colour. And there's no real way of finding that out nowadays. But I suspect from Gordon MacPhail, integrity bottling is likely. Now, I got this bottle at auction, and I'd been trying a few drams, and eventually, about a week ago, the cork broke. These are the remnants of the cork. So these two bits fell as one into the bottle. It's quite a bit of a dibble. You do find that this can happen if you've had a bottle that's been lying. It was unopened. I mean, I got it at auction, and it was sealed, and it was full. And I suspect the cork probably has dried out and eventually shrunk a bit, and it just broke. Now, to get it out of this bottle is quite hard because, especially if there's a big chunk, so I had to get a long, fairly thick needle in and cut that bit, the cork bit, in half, and then it would come out the top. Then I decanted the bottle into another bottle, empty bottle, and then poured it back in, and that seems to have done the job. It's a lovely colour, sherry butt matured, and to replace the broken cork, I had a bottle of gin that had a rubber cork, and I think I'm probably going to finish this one pretty quick, but this is quite tight, this rubber cork, and it's always a good idea to keep a few spare used corks available just in case of such eventualities. So, what have we got here? Well, two things I really do like about this. One is the colour, and the other is when I add water to this in a few minutes, you're going to see the most fantastic Scotch mist, almost instantaneous. So I don't think this is chill filtered. And it's got lovely tears. So let's see where we are. And it's got a lovely lightness to it. Freshness. Complex too, though. And it's easy whiskey to nose. There's wonderful notes of marmalade. And there's cigarette tobacco and pureed chestnuts. And a few smaller mushrooms, chicken of the woods. It's punchy and powerful. Bold notes of espresso coffee, burnt cake, cherry wood, lit cigarette. But you also get nutty sherry. Rich sherry character laced with sweet creme brulee and vanilla aromas. Cigars, new upholstery, walnut cake, a bit burnt walnut cake. Try the mouth. Very sweet and fruity. Dried oranges, walnuts, nugget, and quite some sherry now. Notes of violet sweets, mint and licorice sweets, chlorophyll chewing gums. Apricot pie, bananas, flambéed bananas, honey. It's very enjoyable, perfectly balanced, compact, satisfying. There's notes of dried herbs, fir honey, maybe a little cardboard. rich, orangey, candied and spicy. It's some very spicy Christmas cake, rather German style or Alsatian. Soothing cherry sweetness combined with hints of milk chocolate and Brazil nuts. And the finish is rather long, and it's a bold finish on caramel cream, crystallized oranges, spicier caraway, cloves, star anise, Christmas in a glass. I'll add a mill of water to this. And there it is, Scotch mist. Very quick to come. And with water, the malt gets much, much fruitier. Lots of freshly cut apples, golden delicious, and pears. Fresh pineapple, peaches, and something smoky in the background, woody smoke. Notes of lemonade, rosehip tea, some coffee, and quite some cherries, quince jelly, and there's a sort of burnt note there as well. And it gets a little farmier too. Some beautiful waxy resinous notes, beehive, paraffin, camphor, coffee drops, bitter almonds. And the coffee is superb now, like a high end Italian espresso. It's a magnificent nose. Let's try them out. And there's a wee feeling of Haribo's best for a while. And then for Christmas Day, or Boxing Day rather, I made a blood orange posset. And this has got notes of blood orange as well, and Seville oranges. The oak doesn't get in the way. There's more sherry and even more body and compactness. Dried oranges, walnut liqueurs, licorice, wax. And there's more tropical fruits, dried figs, dates, lychees, macadamia nuts. And all with lots of body and oomph. And the finish is very long, creamy, paraffin, Smyrna raisins. You know, Imperial was one of those distilleries not many people were caring for until it got mothballed and then demolished. And the problem may be just like with, say, Benriach. The bottles you could buy 12 or 20 years ago were just so so and never managed to awake anybody's sense or attention. I'm sure the blenders were to blame for that. They were probably using own best casks. But this one, curated by Gordon and MacPhail, is great and is the perfect sherry dram for Christmas or any other time. You know, Imperial had a reputation for making the softest cream soda floral malt, and the curation here by Gordon MacPhail has produced a cracking sherry matured whisky. I hope Dalmunich develops with experience and maturation into a worthy successor. Compliments of the season and have a good new year.